We are back over in the colonial Americas with this piece called Angel with Arquebus, aka Asiel Timor Day. And Asiel is the name of the angel, and Timor Day means fears God. So that is the translation there. And again, we're talking about the Spanish conquest of what we now know as the Americas. And we're going to be dealing with the Spanish Catholics and the viceroy and the military over in the Americas, and the indigenous people and how they are impacted here in the Americas. So we're going to start with context. And there's a good deal of context with this piece. And location-wise, yes, we are in the Americas, this so-called area called New Spain. Specifically, we're in a more area like Peru, South America, during the 1600s or the 17th century through the 18th century or 1700s. So this is a common image that you're seeing around that time period in the colonized area of what we now are going to call New Spain. And so when the Spanish came over, one of their main goals, of course, is to then convert the natives, the indigenous people, to Catholicism and to get rid of the original faiths that the indigenous people would have had. And they do it through education, they do it through intimidation, they do it through all sorts of different kinds of manipulative ways. And one of those ways is through propaganda and art. So I'm going to talk about a couple things here, and then we'll go on to looking specifically at the piece. So let's address the gun first, the arquebus that the angel is holding, which I know is a strange visual to have an angel holding a gun. But arquebus, spelled with an H, is one of the first guns, if not the first gun, to actually prop up and rest on your shoulder. It was a Spanish weapon at the time. When they come over to the Americas, the natives had never seen this kind of weapon before. So you can imagine how unbelievably intimidating that would be. And in some cases, they described it as like supernatural, otherworldly. And so that right there is an intimidation practice. And seeing, the Catholics and the Spanish as something beyond, and with these weapons that were beyond their, imagination. So that right there, and just the presence of a gun in the image, would be intimidating. Guns were seen as the symbolic protections of Christians. Angels were God's army and protective for Christians. But paintings like this with guns were going to be intimidating for the indigenous people, even though some of the things within the image kind of dial back the intimidation just a little bit. And I'll talk about that in a moment. In the Counter-Reformation, when this conquest of New Spain and the New World was happening, in Europe, you had the Counter-Reformation going on. So they're trying to hold on to people in the Catholic Church. They're trying to get new members to the church. So of course, in the Americas, when Spain is conquering the native indigenous people, they're wanting to convert them to Catholicism. Now, one of the vocab terms I'd like you to have, and in context here, is something called the Council of Trent. And it was a committee, like a group of people, formed who were basically trying to answer all of the complaints, the 95 complaints that Martin Luther and the Protestants had lodged against the Catholic Church during the Protestant Reformation. And the council had limited the images of angels in Spain. You could only do the big angels like Gabriel and Michael in Spain. But in the New World here, in New Spain, in the Americas, they really did not follow that limit set by the Council of Trent. And so they really did kind of flood the region with these angel paintings. And what we think they were based on these European prints of angels. And the European prints could make their way very easily around the New World because, like we've talked about with printmaking, prints were cheap and easily made, quickly made. And angels became, because of their ease of these prints and getting the image across very easily, the angels of Christianity basically explained and were connected to the spirituality of the cosmos. And for the indigenous people who had deities, maybe many deities of different aspects of the cosmos, like maybe thunder or lightning or rain or whatever it might be, that they could kind of connect angels, the Christian angels, to those indigenous gods. And those angels could potentially take the place then of those indigenous gods. So angels were powerful kind of tools for the Catholics and those in New Spain to kind of disconnect the native indigenous people from their own gods and faith, and then adapt them and kind of transfer them over to this new faith in Catholicism and these angels. So the other thing that these angel paintings, these angels with guns paintings, it was also based on military prints. And prints from the 17th century, called the exercise of arms, arms being weapons. And they were done in Europe at the time, and they would kind of function as a how-to hold your weapon, how to fire a gun, what's the stand, the stance you should take, well, how should you hold your body. That was, I think, very influential in what these paintings of these angels with guns ultimately look like. The difference is these angel paintings, of course, then combine Christianity, because you have the angel, and the angels wearing some items of the local indigenous people to make them relatable, which I'll talk about, and don't necessarily reflect realistic military body positioning. So there are some differences, yet still some influences from these military prints you're looking at. So let's chat about the content. So, clearly this is a portrait of this particular angel, Asiel, and the angel is like dressed up, ornate dress. You can like silks and lace, big poofy, fabrics in there. And first, the hat. The hat basically is more European influenced, I think actually from France. So hat is European, but the feathers on the hat would be the indigenous of people who were here in the Americas before the Europeans came. And it was a symbol of the wealthy and powerful, that the indigenous who were maybe tribal leaders would wear that. So the hat and the feathers show this combination of indigenous and European wear. The big sleeved, ornate, balloon sleeved coat, we believe was an invention really of the Spanish in America. This is something new. The pattern work shows wealth and status, and again, in the materials and in the pattern. The angel himself is very beautiful, calm, serene, not at all menacing, looking in the face. Nor is the angel really menacing and threatening with how he's holding the gun. Because one, it's not pointed out directly in front of him. There's no feeling that he is actually shooting someone. He's holding the rifle in the accurate way against his shoulder, but if you notice, his right hand is not on the trigger directly. So while there's no immediate threat, the threat is still implied. And that's the interesting thing about this. So this image is a combination of military, sacredness, and the wealthy aristocracy all at once. I think it's a way for the Spanish Catholics who are now here in the Americas, this new Spain, to intimidate, connect, and ultimately then replace the indigenous faiths that the people were following at the time. Like the angel would replace the gods who then, explained and connected to the cosmos, the supernatural of the cosmos. The clothing was part indigenous. The gun was intimidating. All of these manipulative items in this painting are communicating clearly to the indigenous that there is a new religion in town. There's a new, group of people in town, the Catholics, who are going to change your life, your religion, how you live your life, and we're going to do it whether you want us to do it or not. And it's that whole, looks pretty, but there's a slightly sinister message, I think, to this. And so these kinds of angels holding gun paintings, dressed in these ornate clothes, suggesting power, were very common during this time period in the Americas, specifically in the area we know now today as Peru. So I would say function is definitely propaganda message. And formal qualities, you could do pattern. The beautiful, luxurious pattern work on the clothing suggests wealth and status, and therefore power. And when you have power, you're more likely to be able to manipulate those who don't have the power. And I would say emphasis as well. The background setting, there's nothing there other than this just dark, kind of muted brown background. So what we're focused on then is the message, and the message is all contained within the angel. So a very interesting image, a deceptively kind of pretty image, but yet a kind of somewhat menacing image that is dressed up and masked with beauty, sereneness, and that would be a very powerful tool in the Catholic kind of toolbox of manipulation as they're in the New World and converting people to Catholicism. So again, that is Angel with Arquebus, and again, it is a early colonial American work.